Good morning, gardeners. Welcome to my garden. Well, my parents' garden. This morning I woke up at my parents' house and I did what I do every morning. I grabbed a cup of coffee, I walked out to the front porch and just took a look around, and I noticed these little white specks floating around everywhere. I don't know if you can see them, but I thought to myself, well, I haven't seen that bug before. Looked a little closer and I realized that they were little seed parachutes flying around. And that would be beautiful and enchanting if they were the seed parachutes of a flower that I wanted. But I don't think they are. Yeah, if you can see, you probably already spotted the culprit. They are dotted throughout the garden here. It is a tall weed that has really gotten away from us because of the size of the garden and because of how tall things have grown. I didn't even see them and see that they were about to start flowering, but a few of them are, and they are spreading their little seeds all over the garden. Have you spotted them yet? I have no idea what this weed is, but she is all over this garden, and so I really had come over to just hang out, but I very rarely come over and don't get my feet and hands in this garden. So I guess that was Mother Nature telling me what to prioritize for today. It's sometimes a little difficult to know what to start on when there's so much to do in the garden and when the garden is new. So looks like I will be spending the morning pulling these weeds out before they spread any further. And I certainly don't want the seeds flying into my neighbors' yards and causing a problem for them either. So while there is a lot more to do, probably I could be pruning, could be weeding some of the lower growing weeds. I think I'm just going to focus on this just to give me a little bit of direction for this morning and to keep me from spending the entire day in here. So before I do that, I thought I would take you all around and give you a look at what the garden is looking like today. Let's start by backing up and trying to take in the entire picture. So this is the front yard. It's made up of 3 major beds: the island bed, the long foundation border, and then over on the left side, the driveway border. They're mainly perennials and shrubs at the moment, with just a few annuals. And the drought is really taking a toll on everything, even the trees. It is the second week of September in 2024, so things are starting to wind down, but a lot earlier than we're used to, just because of the drought. You can see that these zinnia are completely dry, but we keep them because we are going to be harvesting the seeds and we want to just make sure that the seed pods are totally dry. And, wildlife still seems to see some value in them, so we're not in a rush. That is one of the things that I'm learning this year, to just be a little more patient and a little less neat. I garden for me, I garden for my mom, and we garden together, and it's an activity as well as it is a thing that exists in the world that people are looking at and experiencing with us. So while we do want it to be beautiful, we don't want it to become stressful. So the marigold growing here, also tons of seed pods, and we love marigold. It has been extremely effective in keeping the amount of bugs, pesky bugs out of the yard. You know, the small gnats don't like it, mosquitoes don't like the smell, and truly one marigold really doesn't do much, but having several marigold dotted all over the yard really does curb the the annoying pest pressure for people to be able to enjoy the yard, as well as mint. This Dusty Miller is getting buried by the mint bush here, but the mint is doing a great job to reduce the mosquitoes as well. These two Loropetalum are starting to grow together. I kind of think they look like a heart. I'm wondering if I should trim them that way. This area I recently cleaned out, so I removed a lot of mint from this area, and you can see the mint is still kind of growing, or the mint has begun to grow again, and so now it's creating a low carpet, which is how we prefer it, and that allows us to grow other things in between, and as long as we keep the mint low, it doesn't really pose a problem. I dotted some transcendentia in there, the purple star flower, purple star plant, and the canna are not doing great. It's just not enough water for them. I recently added these helianthus, and they're very small now, but I think that they're supposed to get really tall. So the canna, whenever they're unable to take up the mantle, the helianthus will in the future. These are Calibrachoa, and yeah, it got too dry for them as well. I recently planted them. They weren't very established when the drought and the heat waves rolled through, but they still have a couple of flowers, so that's nice. Of course, cactus is doing well. I think maybe we should be adding more cactus to the plant. With the way that things are going, our climate is changing and we're adjusting slowly. I think adding cactus is going to be a big part of that adjustment. I call this the foundation border, or the perennial border. So there are some staples, shrubs here, but as we walk through the front door, the front walkway, we get into the area that is reserved for perennials that will grow and bloom and then die back in the winter and won't obstruct our view of the island bed, or our view through to the street. This area was also recently dug up and replanted, so everything is very small now. We have some sedum, some daisy, coneflower, marigold. Lining the back of the border, you can see hosta. Hosta did really poorly this year. The view here is important because this is kind of our view from the porch, and so we like to have this be interesting for as long as possible. So that's what I've been working on lately. I don't know what is going on with the daisies though. They seem to never get enough water. You can see their wilted leaves there. But the snapfinger, their snapfinger here seems to be doing okay. The bee balm, there's a tall plant near the back there. That is bee balm. I recently chopped it back and it is filling out. It does get kind of tall and leggy, and it does get powdery mildew, but it seems to be doing okay. We're gonna move it into this island bed just because it does get so tall. I'm not showing you this because the garden is doing particularly well. I mean, you can tell that this coneflower still has some color on it and it looks okay, but this one is totally dry. It's a bit older, and I think maybe that has something to do with it. But it has not rained, you guys, in maybe 2 months. And while sedum seems to be doing okay, look at those daisy, look at those leaves. And they have been watered by hand, and we're not on any sort of drip irrigation, and we likely won't be. That's really not something that fits into our budget or something that we're interested in implementing right now. So it's really important for us that we figure out ways to plant a garden that can survive these conditions. This daisy was a gift from a neighbor, and I'm not entirely sure who. One of our neighbors just left us this gift of several plants from their garden, and we threw it right in here because we love that. This garden is full of pass along plants and hand-me-downs, whether from my garden, from neighbors' gardens, from our previous garden, from friends. My dad has a lot of gardening friends, and so we're really lucky. I took cuttings from a knockout rose, and 2 of them were successful. So there's one here, still doing pretty well, and then there is one more right here. So this one is under the shade of the bee balm, but like I mentioned earlier, the bee balm is not going to be here for long, so once we move it, this rose will have room to grow and to branch out. I'm so proud. So anyway, that is the perennial border. It has really evolved this year from a really big, bushy, minty area filled with zinnia to now a little bit more dialed back. We've got some new plants that are establishing themselves, and I am interested to see what it will look like next year. I know that we would really like to have more low-growing mounding plants here. Dusty Miller for sure. We're gonna try more vinca next year. We're gonna try more ground covers that will control the mint that we planted. And if you ever make the, and I'm doing air quotes, mistake of planting mint and regret it, I want you to just chill out and get your trimmers out and keep it low, and think about how things work in the natural world. If you can find plants that will compete with mint, then you will have mint, and it will keep the bugs back. It will provide you with herbs that you can use. It will provide you with a scent in the garden that is beautiful. I don't know why we villainize mint so much. My parents have grown it ever since I was little. It's never reared its head up and attacked. It's never taken over the entire garden. It's really fine. So yeah, there will be a lot of changes here, I think, but I don't know. I kind of like the way things are looking now, despite the drought, despite the weeds, despite the browning, the light right now on this island bed. It's great. So let's take a look at the plants here in the island bed before I take you to other parts of the garden. So I actually did take a moment to pull those weeds earlier. So it looks a little different now than it did a moment ago. I got a big mint bush here. There are some marigolds and some sedum. You can see some iris leaves poking up back there, and canna. Panicle hydrangea is doing well here, so we're going to be adding some. And that yucca plant just popped up out of nowhere. We didn't plant it. I guess the previous owners must have, and I think that it couldn't compete with the walnut tree. And then when the walnut tree died, the yucca just popped up. Whoa, so isn't nature so interesting? This area is filled with this weed that I'm not sure what it is right now. It looks very tame and innocuous, but it eventually comes up with these long, bushy flowers that just spill seeds all around. So this has been hard to control. But we've got some salvia back there that's completely finished. And then I kind of like what's going on here with all the ground cover that's spreading everywhere, but the knockout roses aren't doing so hot. I guess it's a little too hot. They've been here, the previous owners planted those. The hydrangea pitiful, she's pretty sad, and she was also planted before we arrived. And you know, it's just so interesting thinking about how well things have done for years and then how much they struggle now. Like I said, climate is changing, and it is what is this weed? This is an interesting weed. It's a pretty flower. Yeah, like I was saying, climate is changing, so we are changing with it. Our garden is changing with it. This hydrangea really struggled, but the daylily seems fine. So that's, you know, another data point. Something else to consider as we move forward and continue to plant. In case you were wondering how anyone gets in here, this huge island bed, to do anything, this is one of our maintenance paths. We try to keep this clear so that we can get in here to do any weeding or transplanting. It also allows us to have a closer view of the plants that are deeper in the garden bed. And it's just really nice to have. So I'd like to add some stones here to make it a bit more permanent and make it a little bit easier to walk through. So my dad propagated this gardenia by using an interesting method where he lays a branch over a pot full of soil, and it roots into that pot, and then once it's fully rooted, he cuts the branch away from the mother plant. And so this cutting really took off really quickly. I mean, it's yellowing now because of the drought, but doing okay. So I think it would be great to add a lot more into this space because it does get shade from the magnolia. So I'm looking forward to doing that, to adding more shrubs into this space. It's really not so intentionally planted yet. We're still kind of getting to know the soil conditions and the light conditions here. I think that this morning the light here, the way that it is filtered through the trees, is so lovely. But you can see there are a few things in this space that struggled, competing with the roots of the magnolia. Sedum did fine. Look how good she looks. Definitely going to be adding a lot more sedum into this garden, which will be very easy because sedum propagates like nothing. It's just really easy to propagate sedum. Daylily doing okay. Salvia struggled just a little bit. And yeah, there are a lot of empty spots here. Back here, this stand of canna struggled because of the canna leaf roller, which is something that I will be tackling in the future. Probably going to start a spray program of spraying BT early in the spring. That will hopefully cut down the canna leaf roller. I love canna. Canna is another hand-me-down. One of my mom's good friends gave us maybe a bucket full of canna a few years ago, and now there's canna all over my mom's yard and all over my yard. And all of them have the same issue, the canna leaf roller, but I'm not discouraged. I have had success just cutting it back early in the spring. I haven't tried spraying, so I'm gonna do that. this area here is our iris bed, and it does get very beautiful and full of iris in the spring. I'll see if I can find a picture and throw that in there. Over on this side, a lot of opportunistic planting. Marigolds that my mom seeded through here, zinnia, lantana that were planted from these very crispy looking roots. I honestly did not expect them to do anything. They were nubs. Lantana is a survivor. I think some people actually do have negative associations of lantana because they grow so big and so vigorously. I'm not so sure why we hate plants that grow so well. I have definitely changed my attitude, especially with a garden that is so big. I think that if a plant really wants to take over, then you just gotta give it room to grow. And so that's what we're gonna do. The elephant ear here was planted here because this was a low spot that collected a lot of water. When it does rain, when we are getting water, and since we haven't, the elephant ears look a little sad, but I'm sure they will perk up next time it rains. And there are a few cactus in here. Like I said, I think cactus is something that we're gonna start embracing. There are some, there's a huge stand of daylily here that we're gonna try and divide, but honestly that task, monumental. This is a Jane magnolia. She flowers pink in the spring. She is beautiful. I am going to limb her up. Look at the way the sun filters through there. Okay, anyway, so this area was recently replanted as well. I moved around the canna that was closer to the front and added the hydrangea that was too close to the walkway. The hydrangea really struggled, the transplant shock, as well as that long period of drought that we are actually still in at the moment. But there's still some green on here, so I think that by next spring she'll come back good as new. But the hosta have done well here for years. We've never really had an issue, maybe just minor burning. But this year they seem to burn all the way down to the base. Like, I recently cut them back, and that's why there is any green on them now. But it's obvious to us now that the hosta can no longer live here. So we will be transplanting the majority, or if not all of them, to the back. You can see the cardboard here is where I'm trying to control some weeds, and I will mulch this later on. And this is Japanese viburnum. I love this plant. I think that we need to either propagate or add a few more of these. Or at the very least, we need to limb up this plant so it can show off a little more. Now that we've seen the foundation bed, we are going to walk around to the other side of the driveway, and I have really enjoyed, kind of taking this walk and taking this time to think about what is doing well in the garden and to get this down someplace that we can actually look back on. And to plan for next year. Gardening for me is really all about hope. It's all about optimism. It's all about looking to the future. And, while I did wake up this morning feeling a little bit down about how brown the gardens are, look at this transcendentia. Look at this bright purple, red star flower. This purple bush, this loropetalum, it's not brown. And I really appreciate the color of this cactus. It is blue-green. It's beautiful. And, there are so many things to appreciate in this garden. And I am really enjoying taking the time out to appreciate this rosemary and the yellow flowers that are starting to bloom on its tips. There are so many things for me to appreciate in this garden and our plant collection is still growing, and there are so many lessons to learn. Here's a close-up look at the canna, and you can see there are all these rolled up leaves that have turned completely brown. That is the canna leaf roller. Canna leaf rollers burrow into the leaves early in the spring, wrap themselves up nice and tight. They're cozy, and they're eating the leaf until the leaf dies. So I will be taking care of that next year. Now I know. And that's really the thing about gardening. This azalea blooms white in the spring, stays pretty low to the ground. And this sage is offering this beautiful blue-green, dusty color. I love that color. I'm definitely going to be adding more sage in the garden, maybe taking propagations from this one. There's a few zinnia here that are hanging on. There is some bee balm there. And the transcendentia dotted around. So there is a good combination of colors just in the garden overall. Another Laura petalum. Cute little red flowers on the tips. And this is a less often seen part of the garden. It's the driveway garden, so sometimes things get away from us, like this spider. Blah. That's another lesson in the garden. Spiders love a garden because insects love a garden, and spiders love insects. This tree is a mimosa tree. This came from my garden. In my area, mimosa is invasive. And I did second guess bringing it over here, but my mom has very sentimental attachments to this tree because it grew in Haiti, where we're from, and a similar plant called parasol also grew there. And it has those beautiful pink fuzzy flowers and orange flowers. And I knew that, it had sentimental value for my mom, but it doesn't do well in my yard. It gets the mimosa bagworm, and I can see a little evidence of that here. So that's something that we're going to have to control. We won't allow this plant to set seed, and we won't allow the bagworm to spread, which has spread quite a bit in my area. This is a little side yard that is not quite so developed yet. So that's one of the things on our list, one of our projects, and we will be working on that in the coming years. But we know that Iris does well here, so we'll definitely be adding more of that. I think that's it, you guys. I think that we've seen the entire garden. So I just wanted to thank you for joining me on this garden walk, and for listening to me sort of ramble about what this year has been like, and what I've learned and what I've observed. And I hope that some of these musings have been helpful for you in planning your own garden for next year. One last thing before I go, I wanted to point out this is a JPP plant. Jean Passe, that's what my mom always says. She just throws kitchen water into the garden, and sometimes tomatoes grow because the tomatoes had been cleaned or chopped up and tossed into the kitchen water. So, JPP, you guys, just however things will be. Take it easy, enjoy your garden, don't let it stress you out, and have a great day. I hope you'll come back and join us next time.